whispered, as if he were afraid that if he spoke too loudly, the spell would be broken. I didn't believe him until I saw it for myself one night. Not looking at his friend, Charlie gave a slow nod of his head. They're all ghosts, ain't they? To us, they're ghosts. To them, they're still alive in whatever time it is they lived in. If that little girl can see us, she probably thinks that we're the ghosts. Well, what should we do? I vote for just staying put I vote for just staying put, just like this, until everything's finished passing by. The little girl held out her doll and said, My mommy made this for me, but she's in heaven now with Daddy. They both got real sick and they went to sleep last night and they never woke up. Without thinking, Charlie said, Are they in the wagon? The little girl nodded. Yes, sir. We have to come along so we can say a prayer over everybody's grave. Everyone left in town is going to be there. She looked up the street toward the shadows where the wagons and procession had vanished. I'm tired, sir, and I don't feel so good. It's so cold. Could you maybe take me there? I won't be a bother, truly, I won't. Charlie pulled his arm from Eugene's grip and walked out into the street toward her, reaching out with both hands to give her a hug and pick her up. But just as his hands touched her shoulders, she exhaled again, and her eyes fell back into her sockets, disappearing into the darkness within her skull. And then in a series of soft, dry winter sounds, her entire head began collapsing inward, her flesh crumbling and flaking away, becoming dust as her face sank back, split in half, and dissolved, vanishing in a puff of winter mist. Charlie nearly lost his balance, not only because of the shock of what he had just seen, but also because he'd been readying himself to pick up the extra weight. Eugene made another sign of the cross. You all right there, Charlie? Hell, I don't know. The lost, helpless expression on the little girl's face was still burned into his memory, where he imagined it would probably remain for the rest of his days. Damn it, Eugene. Why didn't I think to ask her for her name? Eugene sighed and shook his head. Mind telling me what good that would have done? I don't know. It just seems like it would have been the proper thing to do, you know? Good God, I ain't seen a body just fall apart like that since my division liberated the camps at Strubing or Ganskirchen-Lager. Eugene sat back down and gestured for Charlie to join him. As soon as Charlie, now shaking, took his usual place on the bench, Eugene patted his friend's shoulder and said, Back in Prohibition days, Daddy had a fellow by the name of Granger Green who made the liquor runs for him. Now those days, Dad got most of his hooch from Kentucky, and Granger was always the one who made the payoffs and pickups. Well, one night, just as he's getting back into Cedar Hill, Granger runs into some Prohibition boys who don't take too kindly to his uppity attitude. Don't take too kindly to his uppity attitude, and that's what one of them called him, uppity. That's all the excuse they needed to pull out their pistols and start firing. Some uppity black boy and a Minerva full of booze gave them some good target practice. Now Granger was smart. He was strong, he was big, and he was fast. Made them Prohibition boys chase him all over Hell's Half Acre before they shot out his tires and he had to take it on foot. And you know what those bastards did? They shot him in the back of both of his knees, and he dropped like a sack of wet cement. But that wasn't enough, not for them. Oh no, not back then. Then they turned their dogs loose on him. After that, they tied him to the back of their car and dragged him all the way to the downtown square where they strung what was left of him up by the neck so the birds could have a little snack. Papers back then, they loved talking about how he was still alive when they hanged him. He hung there for damn near 2 days before some regulars from Tally's here come to cut him down. Daddy was one of the men who helped do it. Now one time I come home from school crying because some other kid had called me a coon and the rest of the kids laughed. Dad said to me, oh yeah, that's pretty terrible, them calling you such an awful name, and I'm sorry it upset you. But boy, if that's the worst that ever happens to you on account of you being colored, you ought to count yourself lucky. Then he told me the story about Granger, and he said that on some nights, in the real dark nights, if you're down on the square around 2 in the morning, you can see the ghosts of the Prohibition boys as they string up poor Granger. Now, I didn't believe him. So one night he wakes me up about 1:30 and we drive downtown to the spot where it happened, and Eugene shook his head. And I'll be damned if I didn't stand there next to the car and watch it happen all over again. Dad, he couldn't look at it for too long, and me, I couldn't look away. I mean, I've seen some photos in the old books about some of the things, the KKK done to black folks over the years, but I never thought about it too much beyond just what I saw in the pictures, right? That night I had no choice, because even though it was 2 in the morning, the whole goddamn thing played out in front of my eyes, clear as day. I could even hear the Prohibition boys laughing and calling Granger these vile names, and then shouting at him to kick a little harder after they'd strung him up from the streetlight. God, Charlie, I had never heard a man choke to death before, and Granger, that man was in so much pain. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. Said Charlie, I never much believed in ghosts, at least not like in this way. As far as I was concerned, I figured ghosts were just, something dreamed up by a guilty conscience. Well, now you know better. Charlie looked at Eugene. How do you, I know you still have the nightmares, but how do you go about your day-to-day stuff knowing that stuff like this actually exists? Eugene grinned. As much as it terrified me, the more I got to thinking about it, the more I decided these ghosts, like the ones we just saw, regardless of what time in the past they come from, I decided for myself that these ghosts are proof that God exists. I figure it's his way of reminding us what's come before, and also maybe his way of warning us to make sure we take care that it never happens again. Does that make it easier for you? Most days, yeah. And on the days that it doesn't make it better? Eugene shrugged. I'd go to the movies or something, anything to distract my thoughts. But you know what I think, Charlie? I think once a man gets to be our age, when 50 is getting to be more and more of a distant memory and 60 so close you can make out its features and smell its breath, it's kind of like a gift, witnessing something like that. Even if it's as terrible as what I saw with Granger. It's a gift because it proves to guys our age that there are still great mysteries. And in this here sad old world, I don't know about you, but I like that right down to the ground, knowing that mysteries still exist. Yes, sir, I certainly do. So you never try to figure out why this happens. I gave up trying to find an explanation a long time ago, my friend. I don't think there even is one. And I'm not sure I'd want to know, even if it turned out there was. They sat in silence for a minute or two, both staring at the spot where the wagons and the procession had passed by, but especially at the spot where the little girl had stopped to speak to them. The street was once again dark, smooth asphalt with no traces of the snow both men had seen. Eugene looked at his watch. Damn, Charlie, I hate to do this, but I still got some work to do in there before I can head home. Charlie checked the time on his own watch. Oh, shit, it's 3 minutes past 2. I'm late checking back in. He began gathering up his lunch pail and coffee thermos. The sheriff's department figures, that maybe some nights I go to the bathroom after I take my breaks, so they give me an extra 15 minutes before someone calls. Then why the rush? I hate being late, okay? It goes against my nature. He saw the piece of cake under the extra napkin in his lunch pail and took it out. You want a piece of cake for the road? And here, I thought you were going to hog it all for yourself. He took it from Charlie. Give my compliments to Ethel, and make sure you tell her and Bobby about the free dinner and, what the hell, for all 3 of you. It'd be an honor to serve your fine lady and veterans like your son and yourself. Well, thank you, Eugene. Charlie shook the other man's hand, which was so big Charlie probably could have sat in if he'd had a mind to, and then watched as Eugene made his way back up the stairs and into the hideaway. Now assured that his friend was safely inside, Charlie let himself back into the factory. Locking the door behind him, he took a few extra seconds to lean his forehead against the cool steel door and steady both his breathing and the beating of his heart. Ethel was never going to believe this, not in a million years. Hey, Hon, guess what happened at work tonight? I saw a bunch of ghosts walking down the street. One of them even stopped and talked to me. Oh, That's nice, Charlie. Listen, why don't you just sit here real quiet? I have to go make a call, okay? Now, don't panic if you hear sirens in a couple of minutes, all right? Here, have another piece of cake while you're waiting. And let's use the plastic fork and knife, shall we, dear? Okay. So if you haven't figured it out, this is a ghost story. And this is pretty typical of the stuff that happens in all of the novels and in any of the Cedar Hill stories. I wrote the first story back in 1970, and the first story appeared in 1984. And I've been working on the series ever since. And it's going to be coming to a conclusion next year, or not, if you believe the minds. But the seventh and final novel in the series is going to be released. And that's where everything that has happened in a majority of the stories and novels before it all comes together. And it's been, keeping track of continuity has been making me nuts. I got a much shorter piece. This is from a nonfiction collection that won a Stoker Award last year for outstanding nonfiction collection called To Each Their Darkness. This is a series of essays about, writing and movies and basically trying to keep yourself sane while you write dark fiction. And I should have used a bookmark. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. Like I said, it's a real short piece. Here we go. This is an essay called A Matter of Life or Death. And I didn't exaggerate this as much as some people are going to think it's been exaggerated. It goes thusly. Now, there's a dark side to professional writing that few people have dared address. I'm talking about the single most dangerous foe to the writer's resolve, the thing that can stop even the most dedicated wordsmith dead in his or her tracks, an element of the publishing business that renders all of us absolutely powerless when faced with it. No, it isn't the dreaded book signing that finds you sitting at a table for 90 minutes, during which time the only person to approach you and the unsold stacks of your new book is someone asking for directions to the bathroom. It isn't having someone discover you write horror and asking, almost as if compelled to do so by congressional decree, so do you know Stephen King? And no, it isn't that utterly radiant metal testing moment when you open that first royalty statement to discover that your new book has, in the course of 1 year, sold only 1/3 of its print run, so obtaining that more pricey loaf of bread is going to have to be put on the back burner once again. Now yes, all of these can test you, no doubt. They can chip away at your confidence if you let them. And they can make you a real buzzkill who doesn't get invited to many parties, but I'm not here to discuss my own dreadful personality problems. No, the single biggest foe to the writer's resolve, confidence, and determination is, insert ominous chord here, dun dun dun. Insert ominous chord here. Thank you. The horror of the used bookstore. Now, we all shop at them. I mean, we're writers, for pity's sakes. Our major source of income is our writing, so none of us can afford to shell out $30 for each new hardcover or $8 for each new paperback on a consistent basis. We go there to find a bargain, or perhaps to locate a book that's been hard to find or out of print for several years. Now, while we're doing this, we remind ourselves that the first sale doctrine, codified in Section 109 of the U.S. Copyright Act, allows the original owner of any book to transfer ownership of the physical copy in any way they choose. So technically, there's nothing legally or morally wrong with our purchasing any books here. Besides, we tell ourselves, stores like this make books affordable to folks who otherwise wouldn't have the money to buy them. So it's all good. Right up until that moment, we find ourselves face to face with copies of our own books. Now, if you've ever published with a mass market house, odds are you found yourself in this situation. And what is the writer's first reaction? But my work is eternal. It speaks to the deepest pain of the human condition. My books are to be treasured. They are to be passed down from generation to generation, not end up here. The first time I discovered copies of my novel in silent graves on the shelf in a used bookstore, I felt a slight twinge of disappointment. I mean, who wouldn't?